Welcome to 5% Radio, where it's all about learning like no one else today so you can live like no one else tomorrow. Please be sure to share and subscribe. What is up, 5%ers, and welcome back to the show. Welcome to episode 15. Cannot believe we are 15 episodes deep into this thing already, but I'm stoked to be talking to you today about this subject, killing Yabuts and curing failure. Now, I know you're probably thinking, what the heck is today's episode about? Well, you're about to find out, and that's why we're here. But before I dive into the episode, I want to lay some groundwork, and before I even get into the groundwork, I want to share a few quotes. Quote number one is by Henry Ford, and he said this: "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." Second quote is by author Napoleon Hill, the writer of Think and Grow Rich, a book that was published, I believe, in 1937 that went on to sell millions and millions and millions of copies. He said this: "Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve." And then lastly, a Bruce Lee quote, he said, "Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can." So, what is today's episode, Killing Yabuts and Curing Failure, about? Well, I'll tell you what it's about. Today's episode is about curing excusitis. You'll hear more about that in a second, but before we dive into that, so I want to lay a groundwork of a basic concept, and today's episode really falls more under mindset than anything else, but generally speaking, your mindset is going to be responsible in the positive or the negative, as in like responsible meaning it gets the credit for, or in the negative, it gets the blame for your failure. So your mindset is super important, and when it comes to your mindset, you have to understand what I'm just about to tell you, and that is the locus of control. Now, what is the locus of control? Where does locus, I know you're probably thinking of the bug. That's not what I'm talking about, but the locus of control is something that is referred to in psychology as basically someone's mindset of how they view the world. So you could kind of consider this a worldview. So a worldview, the analogy that I like to give people is, and I'll do a whole episode on this in the future, but if you could picture wearing a pair of sunglasses that are tinted red, everything you see through those sunglasses would have a slight red tint to it, even if it was not red. You're looking at something that's actually white, and you're like, oh, it's got, a little bit pink, it looks a little bit red. Someone else without those sunglasses sees everything completely differently, while another person has a pair of sunglasses on that are tinted blue, and everything they see in the world is through a blue lens, literally through a blue lens because it's over their face. And the thing is, the person who is wearing those lenses, red, blue, clear, whatever, they don't always know they're wearing them, and that's where something comes into your mindset, like this podcast or a book, or someone has a conversation with you and they make you aware, hey, you're wearing a lens right now that's not serving you in the direction that you'd like to go. So what is the locus of control? The locus of control basically says I can have an external locus of control or an internal. One is empowering, meaning that I can make my own decisions, and I believe that I can affect my own future. I believe that if something happens, that I can choose to go a certain direction that will positively or negatively impact that because I have a choice. The other one is one that says I'm powerless, I'm disempowered, I can't really do anything. Everything that controls my life is outer directed, meaning it does not have to do with me. I'm a victim of circumstance. So how do you know if you are externally or internally controlled? What is your locus of control set to? I'll give you a few examples. So an example of an external locus of control or something that is disempowering would be this: things always happen to me. So if you have the mindset that things always happen to me, not things always happen for me, not good things always occur in my life, but things always happen to me, meaning boo-hoo, poor me, bad stuff always happens to me, that would be an example of an external locus of control. Another one would be, why bother? Why even try? Because every time I try, something happens that's beyond my control. I'm not able to change anything. There's nothing I can do to change blank. It's just the way things are. There's nothing I can do to change insert problem here. It's just the way things are. And then lastly, I'm a victim of circumstance. And this is not really something that people will generally verbalize as much as it is an unspoken thought pattern of something happened out there that I'm not able to control. So these people, to put it in the words of the writer of one of my absolute favorite books, James Allen. He wrote the book As a Man Thinketh years and years and years ago. He put it this way. He said this person basically, in so many words, believes himself to be buffeted by circumstances, meaning something happens that I'm not able to control. Something hits my life and I am a victim. I am at the mercy of that thing. So you can see how this is disempowering, meaning I am taking power away from myself with my own thoughts. And I'm not trying to get woo-woo or weird pop psychology. You know, there's power within you and we're all creators and we're all gods with a small g. Like none of that garbage. That's not what I'm saying. That's a bunch of hooey, and there's a lot of garbage out there. You've got to be careful what you listen to. And I have listened to some of those guys, read some stuff, and I'm like, yeah, those guys are, they're nutty. They're living their lives in the Twilight Zone. We're not gods. I'm not a creator. I'm not, I'm not one with all this weird stuff. So be careful what you listen to. But on this topic, as far as empowerment versus disempowerment, if I have an external locus of control, I am an outer directed person, meaning that I think that my life is completely at the mercy of whatever happens to me. Not whatever I choose to do, but whatever happens to me. And you'll oftentimes see an external locus of control in people that went through abusive situations or that had an alcoholic parent. Because think about this, just pause here, and this is on the subject, but if I have an alcoholic parent, or I have an abusive parent, or I have a parent that just has explosive anger issues, and I have no clue what's going to come through the door when mom or dad comes home from work every single day. And I want to talk about this delicately because I know that if you've lived in any situation even close to what I'm talking about, I know that there's a lot of scars, there's a lot of pain there, because it's very difficult for a child who needs nurture, they need security, they need love, they need acceptance, they need stability. They need to know that things are going to be okay. It's very, very, very difficult and damaging for a kid to grow up in this circumstance, but they basically believe that someone else makes my choices for me. I can't control if parent A or parent B comes home in a rage, or if they come home intoxicated, or if they come home, they had a bad day at work and they're going to take it out on me. The counseling term for that would be kick the dog, because my kids are closest to me, my wife is closest to me, that I'm going to come home and take my frustration out on my family. I can't control how dad's going to come home, so therefore the most important things, the things that impact me the most in my life, are controlled by someone else. This is an external locus of control, and these people will oftentimes not make their own decisions. They will do things that they are not comfortable with doing. They will go places they don't necessarily want to go. They might end up in relationships they don't want to end up in because they are living their life with an external locus of control. What's the other side, and what the heck does this have to do with killing Yabuts and curing failure? I'm laying the groundwork. Remember, I'm laying the groundwork for you to understand the concepts that I explain after this. The internal locus of control, or the empowering worldview, if you will, this is the person that has different lenses on. They see things differently than the other person who is external locus of control, disempowered, thinking things like, I'm a victim of circumstance and there's nothing I can do to change blank. It's just the way things are. On the flip side of that, you have literally the total opposite, 180 degrees. The internal locus of control, the empowered mindset says this: I determine my future. Why not? I can do this. I can change my situation if I, here's a key word, choose to. Not if someone else chooses to, not if things turn around, not if things work out, but if I choose to, if I decide to make a choice, if I decide to take action. It does not matter what happens. I'm still in control of my choices, and my choices can always change the outcome. So here we see a difference of empowerment versus disempowerment. One person says, I can't because of blank, and another person says, blank might be going on, but I can still control my circumstances. One of my absolute favorite quotes, and this is by just a phenomenal guy, Chuck Swindoll, and he said this. He said, the longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than success, than what others think or say or do. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. Now, there's a lot of people right now, you're like, hold the phone, stop right there, pause. I totally disagree. What about this? And you want to name like the most terrible circumstance that you can ever think of. I get that. I'm just telling you what Chuck Swindoll said. He's done a lot of amazing, impactful things with his life to help a lot of other people. And this is what he had to say. I am convinced that life is 10%, 1/10 what happens to me, and 90% how I react to it. In other words, internal locus of control. Things may hit me, but it's more important what happens in me than what happens to me. Okay? So I want you to picture your life, if you would, as going downstream in a rushing river and you're in a kayak. Empowerment, or the internal locus of control, is you paddling hard and steering your best. So you have an oar and you're doing your absolute best to steer and to paddle. And I'm going to talk about a process to help you learn faster from mistakes and help you learn faster from why something worked in success. It's going to be called PDCA. It's going to be the 16th episode. I stole this from a very, very successful leadership. I'm not going to call him a guru because that's not the term that he prefers. He's talked about that many times in speeches, but I'll be teaching you his exact process that he uses for himself and the people that he mentors and when he writes and speaks, and phenomenal process. So be sure to tune into episode 16. It's going to be about really how can I learn from mistakes and how can I learn quickly so I don't have to keep repeating the same exact mistakes, because some of you are stuck out there doing the same thing year after year after year and you're frustrated. How the heck do I change this? I'll cover that in episode 16. But so empowerment, or the internal locus of control, is basically you paddling hard down this rushing river and steering your best. Now, the other side of that is disempowerment, which is the external locus of control, meaning that things happen to me. I'm a victim of circumstance, and that is basically equivalent to you not paddling. Imagine going down this rushing river and you're just totally surrendering to the will of the waves and the rapids. You're in a kayak. You don't even have the oar. Like, you don't even have anything to paddle or steer with, and you're just crashing into every single rock and wall of this canyon. Like, it's terrible. You're literally going down the stream either way, but one person has the ability to paddle, internal locus of control. They're empowered. The other person has no ability to paddle, or they choose not to paddle, external locus of control. They're disempowered. So you might still crash into a wall from time to time. I might still hit a rock, but at least with the empowerment, or the internal locus of control, I have an oar and I'm able to steer myself. Now, Matthew 5:45 says this. It says that God sendeth rain on the just and the unjust, meaning good things are going to happen to good people, bad things are going to happen to good people, good things are going to happen to bad people, and bad things are going to there's another term that says basically the wind is not partial, or it doesn't play favorites with the sailor. Like, the wind does not care. It's just going to blow. It's going to rain on everybody. The wind's going to blow. It's about what you do with it, but there's no, there's no favorites. Good things and bad things will happen to everyone in life, quote unquote, good and bad, meaning, okay, this is a tough situation. This is something that I would categorize as a blessing, whatever. It's about what you do with it. The longer I live. And then he ended that quote with saying, I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% basically what I choose to do with it. So keep that in mind. And then Galatians 6:7 says this, be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. And in success literature, this principle right here that is talked about in Galatians 6:7, meaning if I do something, there's always going to be a result. There's cause and effect. I do one thing, I do A, B is going to happen. I can't do A and not ever get B. Like, it's going to happen. It's called the law of harvest, meaning whatever I plant, I'm going to reap. Okay? New York Times bestselling author and top 50 leadership Inc. magazine expert Chris Brady calls what I'm about to talk about disallowing externalities. David Schwartz, in his book, in chapter 2 of The Magic of Thinking Big, calls this curing yourself of excusitis, the disease of all failures. And he says this, he says, you will find the more successful an individual is, the less inclined he is to give excuses. So they called it, curing the disease of failure, excusitis, and Chris Brady calls it disallowing externalities, meaning there's stuff going on outside that I can allow to affect me, but I'm going to choose to disallow it. I'm going to take the power away from it, and it matters what I do, not what happens. I'm going to call this killing Yabuts. Shout out to the youth camp director that I went to, a youth camp when I was like a freshman in high school. He preached the message about killing Yabuts. Jeremy Hales, love that guy to death, was a phenomenal leader that influenced me a lot. But basically, what is an excuse? An excuse is this right here. I can't X because of Y. Put whatever you want in place of X and Y. I can't do this because of that. Now, you can allow, and you can tell that I'm getting passionate about this, but you can allow a lot of things to hold you back in life because of this one thing, your thinking and your ability to allow excuses. Now, people say habits are like rabbits, they multiply. Well, excuses are like rabbits. If I have one, Not a big deal. If I have 2, there's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's going to be a lot more. So, okay, what are some excuses that people commonly deal with when they're trying to succeed? And again, normally I say, succeed in whatever area, but I'm talking about if you want to succeed in business, if you want to succeed in any area, these apply, but specifically if you want to make it, if you want to succeed in business, if you want to do something big with your life, whether it's business or growing an organization, leadership, there will be a ton of acceptable excuses that if you gave them to someone who's unsuccessful, they would say, you know what, you're right, that makes sense. Because of X, you can't Y, I'm with you, and they will back you up. And be careful if you begin to buy other people's excuses, because it won't be long after you've started buying them that you will start becoming a seller of excuses. But think about this. How many times have you heard people say, yeah, but my health? Yeah, but I'm too old. Yeah, but I'm too young. I can't do that because of my age. I would, blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't. It makes sense. Yeah, but I'm this age. Yeah, but I'm too old. I'm past my prime. I'm a senior citizen. Yeah, but I'm too young. No one's going to listen to me. No one's going to come into a business. No one's going to help. No one's going to follow me leading an organization. I'm too young to pastor. I'm too young to this. I'm too young to make that much money. Yeah, but my age. Okay. What about this one? Yeah, but my health. Yeah, but this runs in my family, and I'll never be able to lose the weight, and I'll never be able to. I would never be able to succeed because I have to sleep 8 hours every single night, and I'm not telling you not to sleep, but yeah, but I would do that, but yeah, but I can't lose any sleep. I would, but I can't stay up late tonight. I can't get up early tomorrow morning. I can't work with that schedule. Yeah, but my job. Yeah, but this. Yeah, but the hours that I work. Yeah, but my calendar. Yeah, but my boss. Yeah, but my family. Yeah, but this. Yeah, but that. Yeah, but my finances. I would get started in that business, but I'm not able to afford this. Yeah, but I would start my own company, but I'm not able to get the groundwork laid. Yeah, but I would do that, but we don't have the money in savings. Yeah, but things are tight right now. Yeah, but I can't get approved for the loan. Yeah, but I've never really been good with money, and yeah, but no one in my family has ever made that sort of money. Yeah, but people in my family have never gone to college. We've never really done the educational route. So I know that I want to be a doctor, and that's been my dream since I was a kid. But yeah, but no one in my family goes to college. No one gets degrees. That yeah, but this. Yeah, but that. Yeah, but my marriage, my wife is not supportive. My husband's not supportive. He's negative, she's negative, or yeah, but he's a dreamer, and I'm really more about the details, or yeah, but my IQ, I just don't feel like I'm smart enough. I don't feel like I have the intellect of some of these guys, and I would do it. I would be so happy to do it, and I could do it. Yeah, I could do it, but yeah, but where I live, you don't understand. It's a small town. It's a little area. No one in my town's ever done that. No one in my town's ever made 6 figures a month. No one that I've ever met has made that much money. Yeah, I would be financially free, but no one that I know is financially free, and I don't know how I'm going to get there. Yeah, but my family, we've always been poor. We've always had divorce in our family. We've always had this. We've always had that. Yeah, but I don't have the time. I would, but I'm too busy. I've got too many things going on. Yeah, but my personal track record, you see, I've quit a lot of things. I've done this and I've done that, and I tried this and I tried that, and then I quit and I quit and I quit, and yeah, but I just don't feel like I can finish things. And I would love to do that, but I just feel like, given my personal track record, my personal history, my limitations, yeah, but I'm not as talented as that person. Yeah, but I would do it. But see, that guy is more gifted than me. But if I was as gifted as him, yeah, that'd be great. But I'm not. Yeah, but my personality, I'm just kind of introverted. I've just never really been the kind of guy to be extroverted. Yeah, but I would love to do that, but that's for someone else. Yeah, I would, man, it'd be so cool to be able to speak on stage and to be able to get good with sales and be able to be a leader, and it would be awesome to do that. And, I've always dreamed of doing this, and I've dreamed of doing that. Yeah, but my personality, and I'm just kind of introverted, and I'm not that great with details, or yeah, but I'm too outgoing and I have a hard time being a good listener. Yeah, I would, but if you're not really sure what I'm talking about with the personalities thing, go listen to episode 9. I walk through the 4 personalities. Yeah, but I understand that, that worked for that guy, but my situation is so unique. Yeah, I would do that, and I would be able to make this work, but my personal circumstances, yeah, I understand that 99 times out of 100 it wouldn't matter, but my situation, these are Yabuts. These are Yabuts. You got to kill those little suckers. You've got to do whatever you can to get rid of them, because again, if you start accepting excuses, if you start buying someone else's excuses, you will become a seller of them. First, you'll become a seller of them to yourself. Second, you will start selling them, pitching them, doing whatever you can to get someone else to buy your excuses. You've got to kill Yabuts. You've got to choose to have an internal locus of control, meaning my choices make an impact. Is there sovereign will of God over your life? Is there a plan for your life? Yes. Yes. Bible talks about, man, he plans his steps, but the Lord directs, yes, I can plan out a path, but he directs my steps. I can make a plan of, yes, okay, I want to go here, but ultimately, is he in control of things? Yes, but do I have free will? Absolutely. Because here's the deal. Here's where this argument totally breaks down when people are like, well, God's in ultimate control and it doesn't really matter what I do. Here's where this breaks down. If they do something, I'm going to say uninformed. I don't want to say stupid too much because I know that's like a swear word to 5-year-olds. So if I do something uninformed and I make a terrible decision, I would never be like, my free will got me in trouble, ever. However, okay, if something great happened, I might take credit for the choice or I might say it was God. But if I do something that totally just screws things up, just messes everything up, it's a huge wreck, I would never say, yeah, well, this was my free will, it was my choice. So the argument makes sense when I say, well, God's got a plan for my life, and therefore I'm not going to act. When something good comes your way, you're like, oh, it was God. When something bad comes your way, you're like, oh, it was God again. You never want to admit that, okay, maybe I made a terrible decision and I went off track there. Like if you're driving, you're the one holding the steering wheel, okay? I'm telling you, hey, look, you can go wherever you want. Here's what the GPS says. And you get yourself completely lost. Your phone dies. You crash the car. Can you blame me? I'm sitting in the passenger seat. I told you could drive. I told you exactly where you should go. I told you the thing that's best for you. I told you, hey, look, here's a GPS that'll take you exactly where you want to go. You'll avoid all the slow spots. You'll avoid wrecks, like you'll avoid slow traffic. All you have to do is follow it, and then you don't follow it. Now it's your fault. If you want to be successful, you've got to learn, instead of making excuses, to take responsibility. I can take my time making excuses. I heard one guy put it this way. He said, you can make a million excuses or $1 million, but you can't have both. I can spend my time becoming successful in the area that matters to me, or I can spend my time coming up with reasons why I choose to stay a loser. And does that come off harsh? Absolutely. But this is how I talk to myself. Would I talk to you this way? Absolutely not. If you and I were sitting there having a one-on-one conversation and you're trying to overcome some stuff, I'm not going to be like, come on, man, like quit being a loser. I'm not going to do that. But with myself, if I'm making excuses to myself, I've got too many books in my head. I've got too many thousands of audios. I've had way too many conversations with the guys that mentor me to hear excuses from myself and be like, yep, that sounds good. It gets to a point where you know too much about yourself for you to fool yourself anymore. It gets to a place where I know all of my own downfalls, weaknesses, pitfalls, the things that naturally I have an inclination to fail in this area. It gets to a place where you go to make an excuse to yourself and you're like, dude, that's garbage and you know it. And then you've got to choose to have that conversation in your head. So how do you deal with Yabuts? How do you actually kill excuses? How do you cure the disease of all failures, which is excusitis? Meaning I chronically make excuses. I'm killing myself because I'm making excuses. I'm literally, if it's a disease that it is killing you, it's making you sick, you are making your own success sick and killing it little by little, inch by inch, day by day, because you're making excuses. Look, you can either make excuses or make something happen. Tell me what you want, and then tell me exactly what it takes to get it. And if you're not doing what it takes to get it, there's only one reason. It's because you haven't taken 100% total and complete responsibility over the things that you need to do for that area. If I take responsibility for the things that I need to do for that area, I don't care what it is. Money, take responsibility. Marriage, take responsibility. Health, take responsibility. You're leading an organization and it's not going well. It's not the people in your congregation. It's not the people that you're leading. Oh, well, if they would do this, yeah, I would. But if they, no, kill the Yabut. Take responsibility. You've got terrible finances, take responsibility. You hate your job, guess what? You can leave. There's other jobs. You don't enjoy working for someone else? You want to start your own business? Yeah, I would, but no. Kill the Yabut. Shoot the little sucker dead. Get rid of it. And don't ever make the excuse again. I would love to do that, but my education, you've got to get rid of it. You've got to learn how to argue with your own thought patterns. If you don't know what I'm talking about with that, listen to episode 1 and then look for supportive evidence after I've argued with it. No, that's not right, because look for evidence to support the opposite. You've got to look back on your past victories to see what you can do currently. You've got to look back on the things that you've done well in the past that worked out, that you were able to win in, areas that you were able to have success in. You've got to look back in those areas and say, this is why I can do it, instead of looking for why can't I, because you will find what you look for. So one of the things that there's an author that I really enjoy his work. His name is Alex Hormozi. He's writing a series of books on marketing and sales. If you're not into just straight up nerdy business stuff, you probably won't enjoy his material. But if you're looking for a way to scale your S-type business, then read anything you can by Alex Hormozi, including his book on gyms, because there are so many gold nuggets in there that have nothing to do with the fitness industry, whatsoever. That will blow your mind. But anyway, Alex Hormozi, check him out. He's got a podcast. He's got a YouTube channel. He's got books. Phenomenal guy. Language is a little rough, so I'm not necessarily suggesting that you buy his audiobook or anything, but his just regular books are killer. Anyway, so you have to argue with that thought, and then you have to, again, go back, listen to episode 1, and then look for supportive evidence. This comes from a book, several different books, but the book that I'm referencing here is called Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, and he's one of the first people to actually research and find a lot of things out about the self-image, the self-concept, how we see ourselves, self-perception, whatever you want to call it. And he was the one that wrote that book. And basically he said, you've got to find supportive evidence that gives you a reason to believe that you would be able to do the thing in question. So to summarize what we talked about, here's what happens to people. An event takes place. I can do one of two things. I want you to picture every single time something happens in your life and you have to take a moment to tell yourself a story about what just happened. It was good. It was bad. I'm not going to hit my goal because of, or I'll be able to hit my goal, or what if in the positive, or what if in the negative. Think about this. I want you to think about there's a fork in the road. So an event happens, and then automatically in your mind, there's a fork in the road. I can make excuses, disempower myself, and become a victim or stay a victim for longer. Or I can say, I'm not going to make excuses. I'll take 100% ownership. Now I empower myself, internal locus of control versus external. I take control and I make a positive action. I make a choice because I know I can influence the outcome, the law of harvest. Whatever I plant, I'm going to harvest. Whatever I reap, I will sow. I understand. So fork on the road, an event happens. Event happens. I can make excuses, or I can take responsibility. No excuses. I can be a victim, or I can feel empowered. I can tell myself a positive story and become a victim, I can tell myself a positive story and become a victor, or I can tell myself a negative story and become or stay a victim. This is why people do not move on. This is why right here. I can make excuses or I can take responsibility, but I cannot do both. So what's the key takeaway? Well, number one, going back to our first episode here on the show, TFAR, the thing that's controlling your life. Your thinking determines your feelings determine your actions determine your results. So if I want to change my results, I have to go back to change my actions. To change my actions, I change my feelings. To change my feelings, I change my thoughts. And at an even deeper level than that, if I want to change my thoughts are always based on my beliefs. I have to learn how to find limiting beliefs, reshape them, and change my belief system. That's harder. It takes a lot of time. But at the very surface level, I can start changing my thoughts immediately. I can start changing what I allow to take up room in my head. Think about this. If your best friend talked to you the way that you talk to yourself, they probably wouldn't be your best friend. If I walked up to you tomorrow and I had been listening to your thought life and I talked to you the way that you probably talk to you about your chances of reaching your goals and dreams, depending on your personality, you might say something rude. You might tell me like, hey, you're being a jerk, like you don't have to say that. Or you might, but like I know people that would just punch me right in the nose. If I talk to you like you talk to you, you'd probably punch me in the face, walk away, and never talk to me again. So stop talking to yourself in a way that's not moving you forward. I talk to myself harsh, not in a degrading, demeaning, like I don't call myself names, but sometimes sissy, pansy, wimp, like, come on, is that all you got? Like I talk to myself pretty harsh. I coach myself mentally in everything I do. I don't care what it is. I coach myself because someone's got to do that. I can't rely on someone to constantly call me on the phone and like puff me up. Like, hey coach, like, stick an air pump in my side and puff me up. Like make me feel, I can't rely on that because that person's not always going to be there. but I can rely on myself to say, it's okay, you're going to get through this. We'll be able to do this. Here's why you can succeed, man. What if this happens in the positive? What if tonight you're able to actually get 30% closer to your goal and nothing bad that you even thought about is going to happen? What if it's actually the best night you've ever had? What if your organization, what if the project, what if you're in, you've got to have a positive mindset. And I'll get more into the power of stories that you tell yourself as far as empowerment versus disempowerment and really deep mindset stuff. I'll deep dive on that later, but for now, just remember that thoughts are things, and every single time you plant and water a thought, meaning I have a thought and then I have it again and again, every single time I plant and water a thought with repetition, it will grow and attract more like thoughts, aka if I think one way and I think that way repeatedly, I believe it was Aristotle, he said, you are what you repeatedly do. If I do something long enough, it will become deeply ingrained in me. And then lastly, remember this, where attention goes, energy flows. Where attention goes, energy flows. And one way to combat this negative excusitis is to look at something and say, how is this my fault? Where can I take responsibility for this? Even if it is the smallest, I've heard people apologize when they did nothing wrong. Like literally a guy was arguing with his wife, and it wasn't like a knockdown drug. They were having an intense fellowship. One of them was the intense one. One of them was the fellowship, or what, we've all heard that joke, but they were having a heated discussion about something super important. And the wife came back to the husband later on that day and she said, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. He's like, you don't have to say you're sorry. Like, I was wrong. I was on the wrong side of the argument. You were right. I understand that. I respect your point of view. Like, I was wrong. And she's like, I get that I was right and you were wrong. I'm not here because of that. She said, I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. She looked for a place to take ownership and responsibility of the situation, even though she was in the right. That is an ownership, leadership, empowerment, internal locus of control, not making excuses. This is my fault for the best or for the worst. Find ways to take responsibility. And then I want you to give yourself this sentence. That may be so, but insert circumstance here. Yeah, that might be the case, but I can still blank. Yeah, that might be the case, but we're going to be able to blank. You've got to find ways to reframe things in the positive. And then lastly, the positive, what if? What if only forward thinking, only thinking about a positive what if? Because most of the times people will think about a negative what if. That's very disempowering. It takes you down the wrong way. And if I ask a question, thinking is one thing. I talked about this again, episode 1. If you have not heard it, for the 100th time, go back and listen to episode 1. I really put a lot of time into that. But if I ask a question, anytime I'm thinking, I'm asking a question or I'm making statements. I'm asking questions that I mentally then will answer to myself. Like, oh, I don't talk to myself. Everyone talks to themselves. By you sitting here listening to this podcast, saying in your head, I don't talk to myself. Only crazy people talk to themselves. You're talking to yourself. We all talk to ourselves. Hopefully it's not out loud, in the car. How was your day? Oh, it was great. How was yours? Like, if that's the case, you might want to find a different show. You might need some more help. But think about everything you do in your brain, spoken, unspoken. You're asking questions or making statements, and then you're continuing to ask questions or make statements. So make sure that you're asking the right questions. Guys, hopefully that was a helpful episode. That might be one that you want to listen to again, maybe take some notes, but look for areas that you can take responsibility and make things happen instead of make excuses. I'll talk to you in episode 16, where we will talk about the PDCA process.